appreciate all your help.
I'm getting it all down now that I'm. Hey,
Just throw up your hands.
now that I'm getting fired, I'm getting it all down. Okay, you ready?
Simple solution.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Utah Transit Authority and welcome you all. Thank you for coming. We'll ask Kathy Griffiths to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and Sheldon Shaw to give us our safety first minute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, Chair, Trustees. Appreciate the opportunity to give the safety minute as always. And for the safety minute, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the Chair and the Trustees for supporting safety and security throughout the years, making UTA a better place. In lieu of a safety minute, I'm going to bring up Officer Tony Brereton and Daisy, one of our working dogs. They're recently back from a national competition, did very well, and I'll have him explain competition and what the working dogs provide to us and the community as a whole.
Hey, good afternoon. Daisy here. See you. Yeah, this is Daisy. Name's Tony Brereton. I've been with UTA for about a year and a half now. Came from Salt Lake City, originally retired from there. When I got here, I was given a position with the Canine Unit. I'm now the department instructor on training our dogs. These dogs we have 3 of them currently, hoping to expand our program a little bit. These dogs are trained in explosive detection, and there's a handful of odors, probably 30 plus odors they're trained in detection. We spend most of our time on the trains, platforms, buses, also assisting outside agencies on cases where they may have need. Daisy and Bobby, who is one of our German short hairs, both of us recently found handguns on shootings in West Valley, where a suspect had run and ditched handguns under fences or in areas they were unable to locate them. And the dogs were able to come out and within minutes locate those weapons, which helps buoy up their case, obviously. One of the things we do in the canine program that I've done for years is competitions, just to see how we measure up with other agencies and other dogs in the programs around the country. This year at the Utah Peace Officers Association trial, our dogs came in first and third. Basically, it's a state of Utah competition. Daisy came in third. Mike Southworth, who is our most recently trained dog that we did in-house as an in-house training program, came in first place. And then just about 2 weeks ago, we traveled down to Las Vegas, the 3 of us, and competed in a, some say international, I'd say more Western United States and some teams out of Mexico. We competed in that competition. There were 65 dogs in the patrol dog division, and then about 16 dogs in the explosive dog competition, where we took first place and second place. Daisy took first. Bobby, who's handled by Chad Ziegenhorn, our sergeant, his dog took second place. So we represented UTA really well. Vegas field trial, or the competition down there, is one of the larger canine trials in the country. I've competed there about 8 different years with my old patrol dog from Salt Lake City. And so if you can get it on the map in Las Vegas, it shows your program's doing really well and is on the right track. So that's just an introduction of what we're doing and where we've been and where we hope to keep going, and give you an idea of how successful our program is at this time. So, any questions? All right. Thank you.
Does Daisy have anything to say? Does Daisy have anything to say? No.
She is Springer Spaniel.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I might have one other question to the gentleman that introduced us. I hope this wasn't work-related here. Is there a
No,
safety
negative,
issue here?
not work-related. Just trying to stay active later in life. So.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sheldon. It's a general comment period, and we'll ask Bob Biles to moderate this.
Thank you. We have several commenters today. Andrew Grubers first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and colleagues and friends here at UTA. I'm here to commend and to thank all the members of the UTA board. This board leaves this agency poised for great success in the future. This board has overseen one of the most envied and studied and emulated transit development efforts in this nation. I regularly receive calls from other regions all around the country asking how our region was able to make such significant investments in developing a transit system that allows us to be poised to meet those mobility and development needs of our region for decades to come. The system that this board has overseen developing carries millions of riders every year, and I believe that it has only just begun to show its true value. The investments that this board has made, this agency has built and operates on a day-to-day basis are one of the most important attributes that this region has to absorb growth in a way that's effective, economical, and benefits our air quality and our quality of life. The board has also gone through an extensive review and updating of all of its policies and procedures to ensure full compliance with applicable laws and regulations and best practices, and has built an excellent staff and contractors and community partners to carry the work forward. So I want to urge all the members of this board to take deep pride in the work that you have done and that everything you have contributed through the Utah Transit Authority to the future of this great region. Now, I'm going to be leaving this meeting shortly to go to the quarterly meeting of the full Wasatch Front Regional Council, where we're going to be releasing the draft Wasatch Choice 2050 Regional Transportation and Land Use Vision. And much of the ability of that vision to productively serve the growing needs of our region is built upon the fact that we have a transit system in place which this region can grow and develop for decades to come. So again, my deep appreciation for everything you've done for this agency and for the region. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Claudia Johnson.
I guess this is the last time you have a chance to see me as a board. Thank you very much for allowing that to happen. I am concerned about what will happen to public meetings in the future. I think a lot of people I talk to are saying, what's going to happen? I appreciate the things that Jerry did before. He set up a lot of things. He gave a lot of trust by a lot of people that felt like something was really going to happen and started on its way. And now everybody's saying what's going to happen, and I am concerned. What about what's happening on the name change? I haven't heard anything. Doesn't mean it wasn't publicized. I don't know. And then the next thing is what's happening on the cost that it's costing us to make that name change. And thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you, I must say, for being involved. So few people in the public give us even comments. So, you know, you're one of the few that are out there that actually help us, have helped us, I must say. I believe they ended up not changing the name. Mr. Chair?
There's nothing official, but the sponsors have said they'll undo that part of the legislation.
Thank you. I thought, what a waste. I mean, we can put that money elsewhere. Alrighty. Anyway, thank you.
Our next speaker is Andrew Jackson.
Do we speak from here or up there? First off, I'm just filling in for Mary Delore Schaefer, who wasn't able to attend. She wanted to be here, but she wanted to give a little bit of an update on the UVX or BRT project and show our appreciation to everyone that was involved in it. So on that route that UVX or BRT is on now, we used to have a couple buses running that route. Last year, they were averaging about 1,800 riders per day, and now we're seeing over 9,000 riders per day on the UVX, and the project isn't even complete yet. We expect once we get the center stations in place that'll be we'll even see an increase above what we're seeing right now. UVU has seen a nearly 700 person decrease in their parking permits that they sold this year versus last year, while they've seen a 10% increase in enrollment during that same period of time. And we continue to see additional ridership increases. We see some increases on Front Runner as they connect to the UVX project, and so it's quite a success. And we feel confident that we'll should easily, once it gets complete and up and going for a little bit, that we'll easily be able to meet our projections on ridership on that. I'd like to thank the community leaders who have saw the vision of the BRT UVX project many, many years ago, and continued that on over probably a 12 or 15 year process. So many of those that started it are no longer, in fact, I don't think any of them are in office anymore, but we appreciate what they've done. I'd like to thank the voters of Utah County who voted for the second quarter sales tax, which helps to fund this. Also like to thank the trustees here who supported the plan, the executive committee and formation of that executive committee, which was something that has never been done at UTA, and I don't even know if it's been done anywhere across the country. Had to get special FTA permission for that, but it allowed for an extra layer of oversight which was needed at that time. And it took a leap of faith also to allow us to try the zero fare route with the CMAQ funding in order to have zero fare on the BRT route. And I know there was a lot of concern about that to begin with. And also for this board that approved the local agreement, which was also approved 2 weeks ago at Utah County. I'd also like to thank BYU and UVU for their support in student passes and their contributions. I'd like to thank FTA for what they've done. I'd also like to thank the UTA staff. Janelle Robertson, I'm sure that many times over the years she's wanted to pull my hair out, but something's already gotten to that first, so she didn't have to do that. Steve, Gray Turner, Bob Biles, who came in and saved the day on the financing of the BRT project, and Mary Delmar Schaefer, and I'm sure there's many others that I could list that put in little parts here or there, or big parts here or there that made it a success. But it was everybody coming together and everybody kind of just laying everything out on the table and working through those issues that were hard at different times and people didn't want to give, but they gave, and it ended up being a great project. There's still a few things that we're working on, like when the bus is full halfway through the route. What do we do? Tell them there'll be another bus coming in a few minutes. And of course, there's still some work to be done, but we think that the things that we're doing, the pioneering that we're doing on this project will have a very positive impact on future BRT projects throughout the system, throughout the state, and even nationally, as you look at ridership and how it works and the demographic that you go for. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an update and thank everyone for their work on this project. It's really a successful project.
Thank you, Andrew.
Our next speaker is Lauren Simpson.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Simpson. I'm the Regional General Manager for the Salt Lake Business Unit here at UTA. We operate the fixed route bus service in Salt Lake County. I come with a half a voice today, but I hope it's loud enough for you to hear my sincere appreciation for you as a board. I've been at UTA for about 21 years. I've seen people come and go. The decisions you make go downhill and eventually implement us as we operate the service to the customers. And I can say that I've never seen as fine or a finer group of board as this group, so thank you very much. An example of the legacy that your work has done is with the Depot District. The facility that's coming, that will have a tremendous impact for us as we try to deliver service to our customers in an efficient and an effective way. But I come not just as my own voice. I have here with us a number of people from the Salt Lake Business Unit, if they can stand. These are some of the 700 employees from the Salt Lake Business Unit that operate fixed route bus service that will be benefited by your support of the Depot District. Depot District will allow us to operate so much better, so much more efficiently and effectively. It will be CNG certified, which will allow us to be much more easily maintain and repair those vehicles. It will be more energy efficient. It will provide so much more space. Right now, we are maxed out at Meadowbrook and Central. We can't, even if we had the dollars, we couldn't get more buses. We couldn't run more service. The first phase of this will allow us to expand as revenues become available, 50% greater service in number of vehicles in downtown Salt Lake than we've had in the past, and much more in the future. We're able to have a training facility that will be much more adequate to our needs and be able to train our folks. So on behalf of the folks that are here and the roughly, as I said, 700 employees from the Salt Lake Business Unit, we want to thank you.
Our next speaker is Bruce Carden.
My name is Bruce Carden. I'm the Commuter Rail General Manager at UTA. I came here about the same time as Lauren, been with UTA 21 years, and I as well have had opportunities over the years to associate with the board and appreciate the vision, the foresight, and the courage that has been expressed over the years, and specifically by this board to help UTA achieve our objectives. Frontrunner this past month achieved its highest ridership that we've had since opening. We averaged more than 21,799 to be exact, passengers per day on Frontrunner. We've been averaging about 18,000, little over that for this past year. So Frontrunner ridership continues to grow and climb. Recently, opening of the UVX line has contributed to that ridership. Provo, Orem stations have increased significantly, but in September compared to the previous year, all but one station had increased ridership compared to the year before. So that growth is spread throughout the region, and so each of the communities that you represent are benefiting from the vision and foresight of the board to fund and promote this part of the UTA system. So on behalf of the Frontrunner family, I express my appreciation to the board for the work and effort that you've done to improve the quality of life of the citizens in the Wasatch Front.
Thank you.
The last card is Matt Sybil.
Thank you, Matt Sybil. I wanted to express my appreciation and personal thanks to the board. You know, when I started at UTA in 2007, I was told a little bit about this board, and that it's a very different kind of board. And that even though there are appointing authorities and we have 6 counties, that this board really always thinks as one and thinks regionally and kind of gets across the boundaries that have been established for the appointing authorities. And I've been reflecting on that a lot. And, you know, this organization began in 1970, so it had a very small board, and it was only Salt Lake City. And over the years, of course, the agency has grown, and we now have 2,500 employees. We serve 6 counties, 80 cities. And through those years, the board has it's grown, it's changed, it's become more complex. Some years it's more political than others, some years it's less, and we all get that. But I have to say that the one thread that I've always seen in my 11 years here is that the board has always worked together, and there's never been this parochial sense. And so, you know, Commissioner Milburn is happy to approve something down in Utah County. And, you know, Andrew Jackson and his predecessors were always happy to approve something that was up in Box Elder County. And the board really worked across those divides. And I just wanted to thank you for that spirit of collaboration. And it's been great to see. And each one of you has left a real positive fingerprint on the organization going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for those wonderful and warm comments.
And they don't have to stay for the meeting.
We'll move now to the consent agenda, and you've all had an opportunity to review those. Unless someone would like to raise a question or issue about one of them or break one of them out, we'll call for a motion to vote for all of them.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second by Nisha. Discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously to approve the consent items. Thank you. We'll move Steve's report to the end and go to number 7. Trustee Cragen, will you provide us, please, a report on the Operations and Customer Experience Committee?
So the Operations and Customer Experience Committee met a few weeks ago and moved forward with some recommendation to the board. And with that, Nicole Bordeaux will be providing a report on our Title VI equity analysis.
Thank you, Trustee. I will, today, I'm Nicole Bordeaux, I'm the VP of External Affairs. I'll be going over the presentation on the Title VI and new service that we're looking at. So this is a change day for December, and we'll be asking the board to approve the Title VI analysis that was presented in your packet. Here's just a brief overview of what our Title VI overview is. It's looking at how the effects of service implementing it or taking it away affects low income or minority populations within our regional service area. So today we'll be looking at what the proposed changes were, our public outreach efforts, and then what the conclusion of the Title VI analysis were. So the route that we were proposing is Route F605. It's a flex route. Our flex routes provide a service that is a little more localized, and you can deviate from this route 2 people generally or more within 3/4 of a mile. This route particularly is kind of local service. We're excited for Woods Cross, Bountiful, and Centerville, where it starts down into, and then Davis into the hospital in this area. I was told they are excited. Let's get to the public comment. We're going to talk why we're excited because this gives them direct access that they didn't have before into commercial areas. So if you look at this, we had a public comment hearing from September 11th to October 12th. You can see we had 3 people in attendance, but what's really neat about this public comment hearing is we actually received a letter with 86 signatures saying, hey, we like the service, we're excited about the flex route, but we don't necessarily like all of the route. So based on the public feedback received, our staff went back and changed just this little route that went into the neighborhood and put it to a more populated area. And you can see that dotted line. And so what's unique about this and really fun for us is to be able to get public feedback, relook at the service planning, and implement what works for the community, what works for us, and really look at how we can work together in engaging the community in our processes. So with that, the Title VI, we have to look, does that affect what we're doing in our process overall? So we take it back to the drawing board, looked at it, and we are adding service, and it doesn't cause any impact to our low income or minority populations. So December change day, we're going to change it to that different routing that the community supports. And we're looking for you to accept that Title VI analysis with no impacts to the communities that we serve for low income or minority populations. Do you have questions about this flex route? I went really fast. I know you're glad. I do want to say things like this are really exciting. I want to take a privilege really quick to say I've been with UTA for only 2 years. You are the board I know. So I am privileged to work with all of you. I've learned so much from you. as I've learned about transit, as I've learned about your communities. So I thank you all for helping me through this transition, and my staff thanks you for the support on working with the community, caring about the riders, caring about services like this, and implementing it. So we're excited to move forward with all of what you've entrusted us in. So thank you so much for all of that. So
thank you, Nicole. We'll
yes.
take public comment. There being none, we'll open it to the board for discussion. This is in the form now of a formal resolution, 2018-10-1.
If I might, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the work that's been done by staff and this particular route, and even the change that was made is now I kind of wish I hadn't moved from that neighborhood, because now that change actually goes just a block away from where I used to live, and I could have utilized that. But
we were
waiting. I think it's fantastic, and appreciate the efforts being made, and I think it will be well utilized.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2008-1002, resolution authorizing, resolution approving the December 2018 change to a Title VI equity analysis.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. We'll call for a roll call vote.
I think it should be 1001.
It is 1001.
1001.
What did I say?
You said it right.
Trustee DeLay. Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
Trustee Molesky. Trustee Milburn. Trustee Acerson.
Aye.
Trustee Ashton.
Aye.
Trustee Chamness. Aye. Trustee Christensen.
Yes.
Trustee Cragen.
Aye.
Trustee Bell.
Aye.
It's unanimous in the affirmative.
Thank you, Nicole. Let's now ask Trustee Acerson to give us an update on the Finance and Audit Committee.
As you can see from the listed items on our section, there are several, and we'll have different people come forward and present and be available for questions. The first item is the resolution authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement with the Davis Salt Lake community. And I'm not sure if, Mary, are you going to address that for us? Or is Brett?
Yeah,
a team.
Yeah, I think we'll do a team effort here. And first of all, I appreciate your committee, Trustee Acerson, for taking this item and being able to move this forward while this board is still constituted as it is. And I'm here because this is something that I personally worked on for the last couple of years, and it's exciting to see it come to this point in time. And I'm glad your committee could take it, since my committee didn't meet this month. So with that, I think I'll turn to Mary, and she'll kind of tee it up, and I might have some comments along the way.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to talk about the Davis County, Davis Salt Lake City Commuter Connector Project and the ILA, the interlocal agreement that is going to help fund the progression of that project. So the project is a proposed bus rapid transit line that would connect from the Woods Cross from Runner Station through Bountiful in North Salt Lake and in downtown Salt Lake City, with a possible extension to the university. An alternatives analysis was completed for this project a couple of years ago, and this is the proposed alignment that was selected. And now we want to move the project. Pardon me?
Can anybody magnify that at all?
I don't know how to.
So is that just Main Street?
You're basically in Davis County. You're at the Woods Cross Front Runner Station.
Oh, wow.
Going up Fifth South to Main Street, and then going south on Main, and eventually coming through onto Highway 89 and then into Salt Lake City.
So it circles down, what, Fifth South,
Yeah, Fifth South up to Main Street, which becomes Highway 89. Highway 89 down through North Salt Lake as it makes the connection then into Beck Street, and then 300 West or 400 West into downtown.
So it goes Beck Street?
Yes.
Wow. How often would this, what frequency would you anticipate?
It would be 10 to 15 minute headways.
Wow. So this is a circulator like UVX.
Much like the Weber project or the UVX
So
project.
you don't have to know a schedule. You just go stand there and something's going to
Correct.
So the entire length is, I don't know if I could fix that map again. Can you? The entire length is about 11.8 miles to downtown Salt Lake, with a possible extension of about 4 miles to the University of Utah. The red on there shows the exclusive guideway. The blue would be the shared lane, and about half of it, 5.6 miles, would be exclusive guideway. We're looking at a capital cost right now of approximately 75 to 85 million. That will be further refined as the project progresses. Ridership of about 3,100 is estimated. So the interlocal agreement, oops.
I just want to see the bottom.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Forgive us while we.
Okay. Oops.
So it terminates where?
The exact
200
by
south.
the by the
200
front
south.
runner.
On
Here?
the south.
Here? Or?
Yeah, well, 200 south and
Was it 9th
West
West, I
Temple.
believe. West Temple.
So that tracks.
Yeah.
Effectively it tracks.
and then we're looking at that option to extend it up to the University of Utah.
And this is fixed guideway.
The red would represent fixed guideway on that map, so about half.
Dedicated lanes, yeah.
Exclusive lanes.
Exclusive lanes like BRT used
Exactly.
to be
And the guideway begins when it comes up to 89.
Yeah, I can't see the map anymore, but about there.
So,
Maybe
so this serves, this is right downtown, right? So people who want to take front runner to Weber County, North Davis, Weber, Box Elder County, don't have to do tracks or down to here to get front runner, right? This is just another way to get to front runner.
So maybe to help answer that, Jeremy, is when FrontRunner came into service, one of the things that we've heard, particularly in South Davis County, is FrontRunner really doesn't do anything for South Davis residents. By the time you, particularly if you're in North Salt Lake or certain parts of Bountiful or whatever, to get yourself to the Woods Cross station, you're in essence going north to then come south. This now provides an opportunity in a very timely fashion for folks to, and kind of right in the core of the business district in downtown and North Salt Lake, and where we're starting to see a lot of growth, particularly in the housing element, higher density housing along Highway 89 in North Salt Lake, and even parts of Bountiful, that this will be right on their front doorstep. It's hopefully, and the concept is, and I firmly believe this will provide an opportunity for a lot of folks that currently aren't utilizing a mass transit to now utilize mass transit that's geared more to them.
It turns the corner, it doesn't go to I-15, it doesn't go to Legacy, it doesn't go to 215.
How are we going to educate people about this? Because I think this is huge. So, I don't ever see us doing things on television, but do we ever get press coverage when something like this happens?
Yeah.
Besides, well, yeah.
As we go through the environmental phase, we'll have a lot of public outreach at that point. So we're just ready to start that process.
Okay. This is going to be great.
This is a game changer.
Oh, game changer, totally. But that's how we're responding to what's happening in growth, and this is just so evident.
Yeah, they get the East Bench in South Davis County. That's pretty big time.
What, Mass Transit?
Anyway, really exciting. Okay, I know I'm taking you a place you don't want to go, but go ahead.
That's great. That's great. So the legislature, the state legislature, appropriated $1.2 million to advance this project, and that Trustee Melbourne was very instrumental in getting us that money, and we appreciate that very much. And that would be to advance into the next phase of the project, the environmental and conceptual engineering. That was given to Davis County, and so, So the funds will be put into an escrow account, and then UTA will be able to draw from that escrow account to pay for a consultant to perform that work. We would hire the consultant and then manage them. And there will also be, the ILA also calls for a steering committee to be established, and that's where we would coordinate or work with the project partners. They would help select the contractor to do the work. They would review alignments and station locations, and also they would help incorporate the project into the city's plans so we can move forward. And I think that was all I had.
You may have told us the completion date estimate.
So the environmental study, we'd like to start right away. We presented as a pre-procurement item in the last meeting, where we would put out an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and hire the consultant, and that would probably be a 1 to 2 year process. We think this process is good to receive federal funding, so we would start that process as well.
What's best guess?
To start.
No, bottom line, when can I get on this?
Reutilize it.
Probably not for 5 to 8 years, maybe.
So we're talking 2023 to 2025.
Yeah. That's when the airport will finally be finished as well. So this is pretty, yep.
And when's
we're going to move. We're going to push to go faster.
I'll be done by then. But BRT, when's BRT and Weaver going to?
I don't know. Leslie, when's BRT and Weaver?
I think the timeline for that is to be completed within about 2 to 3 years from now. I think was that what it was, Steve?
Yeah, I think we were scheduled 2021, 2022.
And that's in project development, so it's moving right along.
Yeah.
You might need to help you get the guy to help you get that funding, though, Trustee Milburn.
Our man on the hill. Thank you, Mary. What else?
That's all I had. Just
questions for Mary?
If I might just add a couple things.
You deserve a little time to speak here.
No, once again, I'm personally pretty excited about this, and to actually see some of your labor start to come to fruition, and most appreciative to the legislature for providing the funding to move this project forward to the next phase. And I think we've identified a number of things that are just very positive about this, and I know the communities along the way from Bountiful and our new trustee or soon-to-be trustee taking over next week, and former councilwoman Beth Holbrook from Bountiful City has been very supportive of this, and Bountiful and North Salt Lake and Witch Cross and the county have just been excited, and you're already starting to see, as I mentioned, some of that housing component and other economic development pieces come together that will enhance the ridership here and provide another opportunity and option for folks. And I think it hits all the things. It provides another option, economic development, improvement of air quality, and I think it's a win-win all the way around the way. So, thank you.
Okay, because things are changing in this agency. Beth, would you see we get invited to these groundbreakings and these events, and especially let us ride?
I would love to do that, and I will definitely make sure that this board here today gets invitations to these. You guys did work very hard, and we really appreciate it. So yes,
thank you. I'm sorry, that was really out of order because I even went to the. Thank you.
You're emeritus, so you can do whatever you want.
You can do anything on your last day, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Is there action for that? Yeah, so Resolution 2018-10-2 will ask for a motion and public comment. All right.
I do not have any public comment cards.
See, there wasn't any. Thank you. Well, Commissioner Melbourne, this is your motion.
I appreciate that, and I'm happy to make the motion to approve Resolution 2018-10-02, which is a resolution authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement to fund the Davis Salt Lake City Community Connector Bus Rapid Transit Project, the conceptual engineering and environmental work, and this is between UTA and Davis County.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Roll call vote.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
Trustee Molesky. Trustee Milburn. Trustee Acerson.
Yes.
Trustee Ashton.
Aye.
Trustee Chamness. Aye. Trustee Christensen.
Aye.
Trustee Cragen.
Aye.
Trustee DeLay. Trustee Bell.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay. Resolution 2018-10-3, Steve and Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. We are going to ask today for a resolution ratifying the adoption of the 2019 tentative budget, which will initiate the process for the public comment period. So upon your approval here, it would be sent out to all the elected officials in the service area, and we'd schedule a public comment period for November with the anticipation of ratification approval of the budget in December. I'm gonna go sit up front. So, this is built off your work in strategic planning and our budget sessions earlier this year. Staff took that comment and has used that to help develop and frame the budget for this year. So as you looked at this, and we focused on our strategic focus areas of customer experience, leadership and advocacy, access to opportunity, strategic funding, and workforce of the future. Those were the key areas that you wanted us to look at. As far as customer experience, we've created a team within the planning department to coordinate that focus. It is interesting to note, 22% of the comments that come into our customer service are favorable comments. I don't know too many businesses that get that. We had our downtime with our fried wire downtown on Main Street. We had a couple people write in on Twitter saying they'd like to volunteer next time because your customer experience, your help for your customers was so great. Now these are writers that want to volunteer to help us out. So that says a lot about our people and the way we work with our customers. Leadership and advocacy. We're active in our community and active with the regulatory groups. So we've been very active this year with the Legislative Interim Committee meetings. We'll continue to do that as we work through their issues. I think there's a big focus on revenues for transportation, unifying and consolidating the sales tax, things like that. That'll be going on in the next year. We're active within the American Public Transportation Association, APTA. That's our industry group. We meet regularly with taking our board members and meet with the congressional delegation and our staff. And you can see how that's paid dividends with getting the Ogden BRT into project development and the recent bus facility grant for the Depot District. So we're very good, very competitive. The Depot District, for example, we were tied for the highest amount of money given out during that grant process. We received $11 million grant there, and we've received a total of $13.6 million of discretionary funding for those projects. That's an activity we want to continue. We're active with Wasatch Front and Mountain Lands. We meet regularly with our councils of governments, the mayors and city councils as we need to.
Could I just make a comment as you talk about some of the federal funding that you have? A lot of people talk about that not being free money and it's taxpayer dollars, et cetera. If we look at the amount of funding that Utah sends back to Washington versus what we get back, if we just look at the surface transportation, UDOT, et cetera, we get back less than what we send. But with the addition of UTA and their success in receiving these federal grants, we come really close to breaking even. So we're not dipping in and taking other people's money, but we're getting that money. And, you know, I mean, we would all prefer that it stayed here and we could just do it, spend it how we want to, but that's not how it is. But because of the great work of UTA, we're able to get it back. We're not stealing other people's tax dollars.
Thank you, Trustee. Good point. And then we're active on the boards. I was meeting with the Salt Lake Chamber earlier this week and Envision Utah today. And there's great work going on there and great networking going on where we're able to help educate the business community and other leaders along the Wasatch Front about what we are accomplishing and what we have to offer them and their employees. With Green Bike this week in Salt Lake City, we announced a program where their Hive Pass that they give out for Salt Lake City residents that they can buy will now have a RFID chip attached to it that gives them access to Green Bike as well. So we're just working on all aspects of that. Operation Lifesavers, our safety program in the railroad industry, and a lot of other groups that we're active with. And with regard to access to opportunity, our transit-oriented development, the Columbus Community Center, we're going to receive an award tomorrow night from the Columbus Group for our work overall in transporting people with disabilities and our work developing the site. Remember, this is at our Meadowbrook Track Station, 39th South, where we're building this hub of opportunity that'll house live space for people on the autism scale and give them very good access to transit. We have a lot of projects where a lot of TOD where we're measuring capital in dollars. This is a project where we're measuring this in the value to human capital, and it's a great testament to our TOD team to pull that together and make that happen.
How many people?
I think there's like 120 total units in there. Some of those are going to be market value. Some of those will be subsidized for those folks. The first and last mile projects we've talked about today with the Finance Committee. We're moving forward with those grants and the communities working with us to get first and last mile connections done. The transportation land use connections showing the communities the land uses that are supportive of transit in our major routes and corridors. Our new innovative mobility group working on strategies to link up with other transit service providers to provide better connections and better options for people. Our past programs, such as UVU and BYU this year, have paid huge dividends. And really proud of Nicole's work and her team with Salt Lake City on the purchase of service. Salt Lake City committing over $5 million a year to purchase additional service within Salt Lake that's going to provide some really critical east-west service, increased frequency and hours of service so that people can depend on the permanence of those routes. They can make development decisions and living and working decisions based on knowing that they're going to have continued access to that high-frequency service. Strategic funding, we've looked with SB 36, fourth quarter, Salt Lake County has jumped on the bandwagon there, and we've for the first time have state funds that are eligible for transit in the transportation investment funds. And UDOT's working on the process now how to evaluate projects. Hope to have that done next spring so we can start competing for that. That starts out with $5 million a year and is expected to rapidly grow. We've seen improved revenue per rider, and I think that a lot of that's due to our past programs and our mobile ticketing app, which has become very popular. We're just removing those barriers to entry to get more people to use that in more cost-effective ways, cost-effective for us as an agency as well as for the riders. And we've mentioned the competitive grant opportunities, and we're proud there are successes there. We had the Region 8 Administrator for the groundbreaking on Depot District, and she just talked about how they enjoy giving grants to UTA because we know how to work the grant process and utilize the money in the way it's supposed to be utilized. And transit-oriented development continues to work on phases of that. We're working on the new processes and procedures as you've directed, and early next year we'll be able to update a rolled-out program there. In our workforce, you can imagine with a tight economy, things are, we're competing for employees. We think we have a lot to offer people for a career in the service-type industry with UTA. Benefit package and just the opportunity for growth within the company. We feel strongly about our culture of continuous improvement and engagement, and that's really exciting for our employees to be able to bring forth ideas and see them come to fruition as the teams evaluate those. In our workforce planning and in-house apprenticeship program, we're working with Salt Lake Community College to help train our mechanics. We need to expand that to our line and signal and track maintenance groups to continue to get that workforce. There's just so many people in that industry area that are retiring now, reaching retirement age. We need to backfill that and really show that as an opportunity. We have an open house here this weekend to try to show people what kind of mechanical jobs we have available and how working for UTA might be a great thing for them to do. But what are our challenges? The rapid population growth along the Wasatch Front. I was at the Envision Utah Board meeting today, and it was really all about that. The number 4 concern that they've seen identified by the board members was transportation. And how can we keep up with the growth there? And our partners at Wasatch Front and Mountain Lands, working together with them to identify the needs and then work together to find resources to do that. Improving our accessibility through the first and last mile projects, improvements to our 6,000 bus stops to make sure we're accessible. These disruptive technologies, I see them disruptive as it changes the status quo, but it's a tremendous opportunity for us to work with Lyft and Green Bike on the Ditch Your Car thing. They had over I think 1,100 or 1,300 people apply for 50 spots to agree to ditch your car and get a pass and credits on Lyft and Green Bike and UTA for a month, and show how people could live and move around the valley without their automobile. So these aren't disruptive from a destructive standpoint to UTA, but something to take advantage of. And then sustainable funding is always an issue for us, and we're seeing these opportunities with the 4th quarter and the opportunity for the 5th quarter coming along that will really help us as we move forward. So as you look at major changes from the 2018 budget, part of that's due to the SB 136 transition. We've set, and you'll see in the resolution, we've set the Board of Trustees compensation for the remainder of this year and into 2019. We felt that there was a need to get these board members paid. They full-time, they wanted to get paid. It was, something we needed to do and something you need to address in the resolution. The service changes with a full year of UVX, and then with the positive train control where we've added the 10th train into the system, you see some increased cost for front-runner service. We'll have the new funding. We haven't fully identified exactly where that fits. We've got some placeholders in the budget for the dedicated funding that we're going to receive from Salt Lake City. They around $5.4 million for that new service. That'll kick off in August, some of that. And then Salt Lake County, we'll start getting the 4th quarter from them starting in July. And we're working with them on what capital improvements and what service improvements they want to see in Salt Lake County as a whole. And then Bob will go through some more detail of what the capital projects are coming in the 2019. So you're seeing a little different mix and some continuation of projects from 2018 to 2019. So Bob, I think this is your turn.
So some of the cost drivers Steve's already talked about. Some of the service increases also include some bus service, Davis, Weber, Tooele, in Utah counties. And when you look at the numbers, we've identified the Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County service separately, so we'll call that out as we go along. We're showing our bargaining unit pay going up about 3.5% in the 2019 budget under our labor agreement, and then administration at about 3%. One of the big changes you'll see in the budget relates to fuel. We've budgeted $220 this year. We're estimating it'll be about $250 next year. We'll continue to monitor that as we work into the final budget. Steve talked about the new funding for salt. Yes.
So the fuel, so you're tax exempt on
Correct.
fuel, correct? Okay.
Correct.
And then I just want to point out that in my agency, we've done a lot of work on the COLAs and Social Security, et cetera, and this is all in line with what we've been seeing on a national basis with
Certainly.
Social Security.
Yeah, and
all this.
our Chief People Officer group looks at the trends nationally, depending upon the jobs, as well as locally.
So I'm agreeing that is.
Yeah, so that's in line with what we're seeing too. As far as the new funding, Steve talked about that. The Salt Lake City agreement and the final budget will be increasing those numbers. We need to put in some upfront costs that Salt Lake City is going to be providing to us to help ramp up the service. So that number I know in the final budget will be larger. But I did want to point that out. And then Salt Lake County, that's 1.5 year. We're estimating $13.4 million. We tentatively have it allocated into operations. Some of that may go into capital. Those are discussions we'll be holding with Salt Lake County over the next several months. So what we're going to do next is go through some financial summaries, and this pretty much follows the budget book that you have in your hand. I want to thank all the staff who worked on this, in particular Brad Armstrong and Terry Black, who helped put this together. This is the book we used to provide 3 months after the budget was approved. And in 18 months, we've been able to move that forward and provide it to you up front now. So we'll start out with operating expenses. You could look at page 17 in that book if you'd like to follow along. This is, again, just a summary of that information. Of the total $454 million operating budget, about $270 million of that is for operations and operations support. That's almost 60%. Another big change you'll see here, and you'll see it in the numbers as we look at it, is the early debt retirement. We're putting aside money from the 2015 bond refunding according to board policy from the savings we got from that 2015 refunding into an account to early retire debt. And the next opportunity to do that is in 2022. Here's the comparison of the operating budget, what's proposed versus the 2018 budget. You'll notice the bus changes. That's mainly due to the Salt Lake City service that we're talking about, as well as the diesel fuel cost. Commuter rail, Steve talked about that. It's diesel cost plus the additional 10th train. The other larger areas you'd see is down in operations support, where we have public safety. We're adding $1.2 million there, as well as $700,000 for the Salt Lake City operations support. And then general administrative, we are adding a few headcount from a different area. And then we have some additional cost in the Chief People Officer and the IT support areas. And then there's Salt Lake County that's identified separately to be decided. Then we go to the rest of the budget. We have non-operating. That includes about $500,000 for an onboard survey that's required every 5 years. So we'll get started on that next year. And of course, our principal interest, that includes not only our bond debt service, but also our leases for revenue service vehicles. We'll talk about that in a few slides. And then contribution to operating reserves, that's the amount that's on the Salt Lake County sales tax that's required to go into our reserves. Again, per board policy. Look at operating expense a different way. This is by line item. As you can see, labor and fringes make up the majority of our operating expense. It's about 71%, if I could do the math correctly. And then the next largest is fuel and lubricants at 6.5%, parts 6.4%, and then utilities, with a lot of that being the propulsion power for our track system. And then the rest of it makes up a fairly small portion of our budget. That was a quick tour through the operating expense. If you go to page 35, we'll talk a little bit about operating revenues. We have some narrative in there on each of our major revenue sources, sales tax, passenger revenues, and federal preventative maintenance, as well as other. As you can see, sales tax makes up almost 69% of our total operating revenues. The passenger revenues have been shrinking because sales tax has gone up so much, and it's down to just a little bit under 12%. Federal preventative maintenance, we're seeing some increases there because we have our light rail lines that are reaching that point where we're now eligible for preventative maintenance dollars. And the other amount, the $22.8 million on this slide, we've identified each of those. Talk about that on the next slide. So sales tax is made up of two things. We've got the Salt Lake County fourth quarter, $13.4 million. We're also looking at a 5% increase in the budget next year on our base. So that's about $14 million increase. Passenger revenue, we're looking at about a 1.3% increase, and that's mainly due to some contracts that we've signed this year. That the full effect will be felt next year. Talked about the federal preventive maintenance. It's really made up of two things: rail lines that are being added and becoming eligible for this funding from the formula funding, and then the amount available from the federal government is increasing. So their pie is getting bigger, and because we are now eligible for some things, we'll get a little bit more of the pie. And then investment income, mainly due to higher interest rates. We're projecting about 3.5% next year. And then our balances, we're going to have a little bit higher balances as we're building up some of the reserves from our 2015 refunding. And then, of course, the funding from Salt Lake City and Utah County. Here's the numbers side of the operating revenues. You can see sales tax going up almost 12%. About half of it is just growth and half of it's coming from Salt Lake County. And then the other increases. Interest income this year, we're really going to be closer to about 5.6 million instead of the 3.7. And when you look at the passenger revenue, instead of 50.3 million, it's really going to be closer to 52.5. And the federal preventative maintenance, instead of 60.8, this year it's going to be closer to 63 million. It's just in the 2018 budget, we pulled the wrong number. We have a contract, and when we looked at the contract, we just got the wrong number.
Okay, I actually remember this. We're not very aggressive in our advertising sales, so that's why we're working on it. But yeah, I asked that question before. Thank you.
If you go to page 40, this is a summary of that page. We do a 5-year projection of what we think will happen with the various revenues and expense. This is a little bit different format because this is really the flow of funds and how it comes through. Operating revenue comes in, debt service gets first use of the operating revenue, and then what's left is available for operations. We get some additional capital revenue from grants and from our local partners. We'll talk about that later, as well as then spending it on capital. So over the 5-year period, we're going to go down about $117 million. Remember, $98 million of that is because of the anticipated reduction in debt in 2022. We're still going to end up in 2023, the forecast would be about $113 million, of which $104 million is required reserves and about $9 million would be unrestricted. That was a quick tour through operating revenue and expense. We'll look at capital and debt now.
If we have questions, do we want them to the end or as we go along? Well, before we get into the capital side, I have maybe a couple questions, and it particularly pertains as we move forward and transition to a new governance structure. I think you mentioned that, and of course, we do need to compensate the new trustees or commissioners or whatever their title is going to be. But, and I just quickly looked at the resolution. It appears that the resolution states that that would be set at $150,000 a year. My question is in my understanding of Senate Bill 136 is that compensation is to be set by the advisory board. And I'm not aware that the advisory board has met as of yet.
They don't exist.
They
do exist.
They do not yet exist. No, not until November 1st. And if you read a close reading of the legislation would say that this board does include it in their approved budget, and the intent is that the advisory board would be looking at it and responsible for it at the 2020 budget and going forward. So we have to set it now. We have to. There's no basis other than what's in the legislation for setting the salary. And
so how do we determine to set it at the maximum?
We felt that was appropriate at this time until we can get job descriptions and comparable compensation and go through a process with the advisory board.
So I don't have the legislation right in front of me, but I don't recall I don't know, maybe I didn't read it correctly, but that the advisory board is then setting it for the subsequent budget year.
Well, it does say that this board is setting it with this budget. So it says that the will be included in the 2019
Or I guess the budget could be amended in the future, right?
That's a possibility.
Can I ask also someone to break this down? Because I'm going to walk out of this meeting and I'm sure someone's going to ask me. And our budget for Board of Trustees for this year was around $500,000. Next year's budget for Board of Trustees, it's about $1.4 million. What does that include? It's the 3 people's salaries?
That's additional support staff dedicated to the board as well. So they'll have, being full-time, they'll have some administrative staff. Okay. So we're moving some headcount around in the organization to provide staff.
Yeah,
so you can see some cuts in some other areas and some increase dedicated. We haven't had a really robust board budget because we haven't had dedicated full-time board members, and they're going to require some dedicated administrative staff.
From here, so we're paying staff from here to go work for them.
Well, they are here, so yes.
Right.
Yeah, I did notice that in the head counts. We've gone from a head count of 2 associated with the board to 8. I can understand. Mm-hmm. So is that anticipating that each individual then has their own AA? And what was the anticipated salary set for those positions?
I don't know the details on the specific salary, but administrative staff associated with the board. Yeah.
And then part of that, are there, what other things do we have? We have a base salary, there's benefits and things of that nature. Are there other other elements that go with that? Any kind of transportation allowance, et cetera, et cetera?
And my question is, does this include that advisory boards? Because we talked about they would probably get some compensation. At least I've heard that come from legislators, that they'd get some compensation as an advisory board. Is that included in this dollar amount?
Advisory board staff and budget is in there as well. Yes. So, yeah, in that board budget, overall board budget. So they, as defined in legislation, they get standard benefits from that. They don't get a transportation other than mileage, insurance, sick leave, vacation, retirement, those aspects.
And one last question while I'm thinking about it, as far as mechanics of how things move forward. So the advisory board isn't composed. I think, I understand at least most have been identified who will be sitting on that advisory board, but they don't become official until after November 1. Who kind of, that's staff or the agency that helps them and calls the meetings and facilitates all that?
That's correct. Similar to what we do for you now.
And do you have a meeting set?
We're tentatively scheduled for November 14th.
Okay, great, thank you.
Bob, Steve, I have a question. As Trustee Milburn stated, I do have a little heartburn. Well, I have a lot of heartburn of taking it up to the salary max of the 150 as defined in the legislation. Also, taking it up to the max, that just asks the second question that if they did do a stellar job and they were to give an additional raise for compensation, that would take an additional act of the legislature to give them a raise. So that doesn't give the advisory board, which I believe their function is to help with policies and guidance of that three-member board for performance. And so I'm opposed at that 150 mark right now. So that being said, we can go let Bob continue.
Okay. Okay, next we'll talk about capital and debt. We'll look at the expense side first on the capital projects. We've broken this out into the various components of state of good repair. About $42.5 million of the $125 million is for state of good repair. The overall 2019 budget for capital is, again, $125 million. For this year, it was $191 million. So we've shrunk that just a little bit, wanting to make sure that the size of the capital budget more closely aligns with the work we can get done. The last several years, we have been able to get all the projects done in that budget year. So this is a little bit intentional on our part. As far as some of the state of good repair capital projects itself, here's the top 9. You've already heard us talk about the interlocking at 4th and Main and 150 South. Those are major projects for us. It's going to take us 3 to 4 weeks to get those done. These are 20-year improvements at that particular location. Then we have our light rail vehicle overhauls project that's been ongoing, getting through our midlife cycle. We've got our standard revenue service vehicle replacements. As Eddie talked to the F&A committee and maybe the board in our special budget session, this is lower than it's typically been because as the maintenance folks looked at our bus replacement cycle, they thought that we didn't really need to buy buses this next year. We could put that off for a while. And so that's going to save us some money as we go forward. And then here are the other ones, some engine rebuilds for Front Runner, again, just keeping those in service. Heading to the capital revenue, there's a variety of sources here. Grants is the largest, almost the largest, I guess. Our internal funding is first. But grants, $40 million, we'll give you some specifics on that. You'll see there's the 2018 bond proceeds. Earlier this year, we issued bonds. We're planning on spending those over 3 years. Some of it was reimbursing ourselves for prior expense. We're spending some this year. We'll spend some next year, and we'll actually spend some in 2020. But we just wanted to call that out so you would know that we're using bond proceeds on these. The local partners, that's an important part of this also. So here's the capital grant revenues. You've heard us talk about the Depot District and how we've been successful obtaining grants for that project, as well as the Tiger projects. You heard earlier from Ryan about the 5310 funding that we get that's often used for capital projects to go along with some operating costs. And then we've been successful with positive train control. Sandy parking structure will be getting underway next year, part of that development. It's almost the final stage of that development. And we're paying only a portion of that particular project. Local partners revenue, Steve talked about earlier. Also, we're very successful at getting others to help us with projects and the teamwork that we have with our 85 cities, 6 counties, and other agencies, including UDOT. And then finally, just the lease revenues. To show that for the Salt Lake City service, we'll be acquiring 10 buses. They're going to be paying the lease cost on those buses as part of their funding for us. And then we have our standard paratransit and van replacement program. Heading over to debt service, this is what makes up that $119 million. We have interest that we're paying on our outstanding bonds. We get an interest subsidy from the federal government on the Build America bonds that were issued in 2009 and 2010, which reduces that interest expense for us. Then we have principal, and what you'll see if you look in the book on page 53, 54, you'll see the principal part's increasing from now on, about $10 million a year over the next several years. So that brings our total principal and interest up to about $111 million. Then we have our lease payments, and we've got our Salt Lake City buses, as well as some bond expenses to make sure we're taking care of our trustee cost and our arbitrage reporting. And then the final section of the budget book has departmental information. It shows, for instance, here's the Office of the Executive Director. It shows total funding, the FTE in that particular area, and then the various offices within the Executive Director area. So the Executive Director, $4.4 million. My office is a little bit over $10 million. We have 100 employees, and you'll find these in the book too. External Affairs, almost $13 million to 91 individuals. Should say FTE. Chief People Office, $6.7 million, 67 FTE. And with each of these, there's some narrative of key initiatives as well as key budget changes. Of course, the big one is the Office of Operations, Capital, and Assets. That's $227 million of the budget, of the total operating budget. And they've got 2,120 people. It's a big operation. Bruce came up and spoke earlier, as did Lauren Simpson. And they've just got big jobs. They do most of the work in the agency. And we have Safety, Security, Technology. That's almost $32 million, and they've got 233. And then
What page are you on, Bob?
that's page 80. Safety and Security. Yeah, I'm jumping through this very quickly. And then the last department is Office Internal Audit. Wouldn't want to leave Rihanna out. They have 3 FTE. So again, that was a real quick tour of the budget book. We've been pleased to be able to provide that so you can look at the details behind the numbers. What happens next is we begin our public and stakeholder comment period on November 1st. We'll be sending information out. The resolution talks about that. We'll be sending information out to our various stakeholders. And then we have a public hearing on November 14th, and of course we accept comments in numerous ways. We'll provide that after November 30th. We'll gather those comments and provide them to the Board of Trustees at their December 12th meeting, where the final budget will be presented and it should be acted upon. Be happy to answer any questions now or any questions that come up over the next few days for you.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Bob, on the Office of the Executive Director, we've got total allotment of $4.4 million with a total full-time employment of 9.
Tell us the page, Toby.
Sorry, page 58, sir. For the corporate board and support, does that include that part of the compensation for the new three?
I don't believe it does. I think that's over in Nicole's area.
Okay.
So what's included? I don't believe that's in there. What's included in there is we do have a contingency line item that's typically kept within the executive director's office. And then another large part of this would be down in the legal services, where we have various claims that get paid, as well as other items that aren't necessarily related to personnel costs.
And the contingency line item, what's the amount of that, for ballpark amount?
I don't remember that offhand. Let's see if Brad does. He's pulling that up.
Okay. And while we're waiting, Mr. Chair, I also have a comment on the capital improvements list. I'm really glad to see the Box Elder right-of-way process moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, for that. We do have for 2019, it should be approved for the Weber County right-of-way through the Weber Area Association of Governments, so that could get started. I would have really liked to have seen some type of discussion and or process getting started for the Ogden BDO Business District track station to get that up there. But I understand a lot better how the system, the process, and the agency works in relation to projects. Thanks to Eddie, Steve, Bob did a great job on educating me on that.
You said tracks. Do you mean front runner?
Front runner. I'm sorry, front runner. Yeah, not tracks. Front runner. So I think that's will be coming pretty soon. Knowing the process a little bit better in that and the other projects that are ongoing, and I understand you couldn't even get them all done in previous years. So with that, I do appreciate that effort.
And so to answer your question, it's $1 million on the contingency.
Where's our current service terminus in north? Our current terminus of service north on Front Runner?
Ogden.
24th Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have the agency owns right away just south of 12th Street, and that's where the problem ends and starts. So hopefully, the Box Elder and the Weber County right of way will get that process going, and then the grant process and all that stuff. So I really do appreciate the efforts on that very much.
That's a big employment center, right?
Yes, sir. Weber County's center of employment.
No, I also want to echo that, the appreciation of that. We've had several meetings up in the Box Elder area, and they're anxious to get going on that right-of-way acquisition. So it's nice to have that in the budget.
Yeah, and I should have pointed out when I did the presentation when we're going through the book, if you're looking at page 58, if you look at page 59, in this example, it gives the amount for wages, fringe, legal, because that's a fairly large number, and then the services. So those are the two large items, and other O&M includes the $1 million of contingency.
Okay,
So that's what makes up the $4.4 million budget.
You might want to spell that out, the contingency thing here, but what is $1 million that's a contingency?
So that's in the operations side is rather than putting it in the operating budget.
I don't care where you put it. What is it?
Well, if something breaks or goes wrong, we have some money set aside to accommodate unexpected expenditures.
Under the office of the executive director?
So that the executive director holds that money. So it doesn't just get assimilated into your other budgets. They have to come to the executive director and ask for those funds to be dispersed. It's just a check and a balance on those funds, that they don't just get absorbed into the normal day-to-day operating costs, that they are reserved and discussed before they're distributed. Just puts a check on that
For
expenditure.
unusual and unforeseen items.
Yeah.
We didn't have a contingency fund for a lot of years. And having the contingency fund means that one of the things that we, as a board, insisted upon the contingency fund was in preparation of what happened in 2008, 2009, when we were in the midst of building and the market dropped and so did everything else. So we had the possibility of continuing to pay our debts, even though we did not have the money coming in at the same rate that it had before. And we continue to keep that contingency fund. There was a hope at one time that we could do a whole year's worth of operations from the contingency. We haven't gotten there by any means.
So there's separate contingencies that the board has required of us to keep on. So there's a total about 13.4% in service operating reserves. That's why you saw an increase in the reserves to accommodate the increased revenue in Salt Lake County that would be used for service. This million that we're talking about is within the administrative organization and that non-pure operational, but other costs that could be higher than expected. And again, we try to manage that and look at that on a case by case, that people have to come up, work it up through the food chain. The executive team would talk about it before any expenditures came out of that.
And have we used this said contingency fund before, Anisha?
I think we potentially have for some salary increase.
Depends on which one you're talking about. If you're talking about the $1 million type funds, just a few weeks ago we used some of that downtown. So the operating department has the ability to go out and fix that without worrying about whether they're going over their budget or not. We've available for those kind of items. If you go to page 41 of the book, we list out the various reserves according to board policy. And the one that Nisha was talking about is the third one down, the service sustainability. That's 5% of our operating budget that we hold in case we see another economic meltdown or something happen to the revenue side. That gives us time to make good decisions. Yes, it's on top of that. And that money requires us to come to the board to talk about.
And you were just talking about the page 59 about the Office of the Executive Director and under services. So we have an increase of 788%. Because why? Were you talking about that?
Let me get you the detail on that one. I don't have it offhand.
Okay.
Some of that could be moving from our legal staff to the Attorney General's office.
Sure.
Where we'll be billed instead of having personnel.
Okay.
I believe that's what the majority of that is.
I think that's correct. So that's a move. The previously legal services reported directly to the board. This year in the budget, based on the changes in 136, they're reporting through the executive director.
Okay, thank you.
But help me understand that, because actually the line above, I would think, takes care of that. You've gone from 525 to a little over $1 million. So what's the huge increase in services? So legal fees, I can understand. So now you're being billed by the Attorney General's office. What is the huge increase in the services line?
Yes, there are several line items that make that up, but we can get you the detail on that.
I had a couple questions, if ready for that. On the contingency, I'm guessing that's kind of part rainy day fund as you talk about. And what percent is that of your operating to keep things going if there is an economic downturn? I know cities used to be 18%, and then they bumped them up and allowed them to go to 25%. That's what we're looking at MAG, is a 25% rainy day.
Right. So if you looked at our total restricted reserves, it's not quite 2 months of operations.
Okay. So it would be good to get that to a 25%. I think that's the standard that are going down after that economic decline. That's what the states move towards. So I think that would be a good thing to do. And if you don't use contingency, those are non-expiring funds, so they'll just roll over into the next year and you can keep building on that. Is that Correct. So we have it set aside there, but it's not like at the end of the fiscal year you go on a wild spending party or something like that. It just gets moved over into the next year. Is that
right? So we would increase these upon board direction. So as we meet with the new board, I'm sure one of the things we'll be talking about is what should our reserve levels be, especially as we become more and more dependent upon sales tax and federal government for operating.
And additionally, that the sales tax is no longer on food, so that becomes much more volatile where you don't have that solid base. So I would just recommend when you're talking to the new trustees that you discuss setting that, because as an interlocal agency, there aren't requirements in state code as to what you have to have or not have, but they did change that for cities to 25%. That seems like, in today's climate, that seems like a good amount to keep things up and going. Obviously, you wouldn't buy a whole bunch of new trains or whatever and have major capital outlays, but just your operating, keeping things going is typically you want to be in that 25% range. So we go through the budget and everything, and we've got the numbers, and that's great, but can you just talk briefly about long-term sustainability and the direction that we're going? Are we on the right track, on the wrong track? What future risk do you see with the budget? And then also, and you may want to answer this one first, is the budget structurally balanced? So in other words, you're using ongoing money for ongoing expenses, one-time money for one-time expenses for that structural balance, that you're not using one-time income for ongoing expenses.
Sure. So,
and Bob, adding to that, the much ballyhooed recession that's on its way, what that's going to do to sales tax funds.
Sure. So go answer your last question first, maybe. If I can remember it that long. So you think about our sales tax and some of the risks that we have. Sales tax would be one of them. But as you look at what we're doing right now, maybe I should go back to this one chart. Let's go here. So as you look at 2019, we're estimating we'll use $35 million more than we're taking in, but that's because of capital expense and some of the projects we're bringing forward from the prior year. If you just look at the operating revenue compared to operations less debt service, we've got a positive at the end of that. Let's see. You can see it right here. That's where that $23 million is in the right column. That $23 million is coming out of operations to help fund that early debt retirement commitment. So when you look at the 2 years, you can see there's a plus there of $18 million in our ability to do that. So then as you look at the long term, we're going to be spending some of our cash. We're estimating we'll begin next year at $266 million. It's not being spent on operations. If you look at the 5 years on operating revenue and compare it to the operations line, increase there, and it's enough to take care of our debt service over that time period. So really it's the capital revenue versus capital expense, and we're using some of the funds that we have now for capital items, the one-time expense. And so we try to be very cautious about that. And if you look at our financial statements, it's actually set up to show here's how much is made available for capital.
Maybe in a worst case scenario, if we did see a decline in some of those revenues, we could just delay the future debt payments.
Well, we could,
prepaying.
It'd be more likely it'd be, yes, we could do that. We wouldn't have to make the $98 million payment in 2022, and it might not be financially the right thing to do in 2022 if interest rates are more than 5%. Financially, you'd be better off holding on to the $98 million instead of retiring 5% coupon debt. So that's the decision that has to be made there. So that 98 million is some extra cushion that if the economy did, do another 2008, 2009, that's some additional cushion. You wouldn't have to do that. There's also capital projects that, we'd like to do, but you could push it off if you had to. As far as risk, you've identified that the sales tax is one of those risks. We've put in 5% growth for next year. We're running about 7.7 right now for the current year, even though the distribution we got yesterday was 3.7% lower than the same month year before. We're still around 7.7% growth for the year over year. So we've not estimated we're going to stay at that growth level for the rest of the year. We've come in and said we think it's going to be a little bit below 7. We'll see what happens. If it's more than 7, then these numbers are a little bit better. We've put in 5% for next year, but the recession I keep hearing about is near the end of the year. Who knows, right? So we watch all of these. We actually do a much longer term forecast than this. We're looking at our state of good repair. Steve has asked that we take a more detailed look at that, and we'll try to improve those numbers. So that's a risk, making sure that we can do the work that needs to be done to keep our system reliable and safe.
Your expectations on sales tax growth, there's it's not compromise number, but there's a number that the state economic folks have that they say consensus. There's a consensus number that they come up with. Mm-hmm. Are you close to in line with that, or do you look at that, or you just do your own?
We get it from time to time, but it's very short term.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's usually just for that fiscal year, and our fiscal years are different. Yeah. And so it's not as helpful as we'd like it to be.
But you take it under consideration.
Yeah, okay. We look at that. And we try to pay attention to other economic information that comes out.
I have a quick question with regards to the Office of External Affairs, page 67 for everybody else. There's a decrease in terms of overall funding in the 2019 year for innovation mobility as well as external relations. Is there any particular reason behind that, seeing as we've seen the number of organizations that are potential partners growing across the state, as well as the need for answering the call of disruptive services? Is there any particular reason that a shift of funding with the Board of
Was that question about innovative mobility?
Innovative mobility as well as the External Relations Department.
Okay, on the innovative mobility, I know that we took 2 of those positions and put them elsewhere in the organization, so that explains that one. I think those went to the new board. Those are 2 of the positions we used for the new board. I would have to ask someone else to talk about the decrease in external relations. I know there were a couple of other headcount changes, and that may be in that particular area.
Thank you.
But we can get you details.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I don't have any other questions. If I could, I'm already late to another commitment, which is Wasatch Front Regional Council. And I don't know what was so special about today, but man, my schedule was just everything overlapped. But so I need to run. But I would just like to make a comment and be put on record. One, on a positive note, I appreciate this format, and it seems to be more detailed and informative than has been presented in the past, and I think that's a great step in the right direction. I appreciate that. I do have some concerns on sections of this budget that's been presented. A number of things that questions have been asked, but really no information, to be given back, and that needs to be, the answer was, I'll get that information to you. And then, of course, the questions, concerns I raised regarding the new board compensation and kind of the sequence of events. You know, once again, they do need to be compensated. The statute set a maximum and a process by which that salary can be set. Given that this is a tentative budget and the advisory board or committee is supposed to meet on the 14th, I'm not sure why we need to go ahead and set it at the maximum now, whereas we could have that advisory board meet, make the recommendation, and then make the adjustment to the budget going forward. And so with that, like I said, I've got to leave, and whether or not you can count my vote now or not, but I'd be on the record as voting no on this budget.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Oh, yes. Thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So this is just to get this out for the 30-day period. It's not the final budget. We're not adopting those final numbers. There'll still be time for the public to discuss this. This is just putting this tentative out there. All right? Okay.
All right.
We do not have any public comment.
Okay. Now, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to put the tentative budget out for the 30-day, is it 30-day comment period? As it's drafted.
I will second that with the understanding that our budget must include the maximum salary in case. It doesn't mean that everybody has to use every penny that's in this budget. In fact, we would hope that there would be ways that they would save along the way.
And I guess to add to that, it's okay to have discussion after the motion in a second, but I've been to a lot of the transportation intermeetings and discussions with the legislators, and I think that's the expectation of what that salary is going to be. I think that's what everybody's expectation was from the meetings that I've been in.
Well, it seemed to me that the final budget is going to be drafted by the 3 full-time commissioners anyway. It takes place in December. So I think we've done the right thing here by sending this forward. It's in their hands next month, for sure, and beyond.
So, Trustee Jackson, I'd just like to clarify that your motion is to approve the resolution as proposed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe typically there's a requirement that you've got to get it out there to have that public period before you can then adopt it, which then you have to get it onto the state website, et cetera. So,
Right, so our bylaws call for the process that we're using to do the tentative budget, then have a 30-day comment period, and then have a final budget.
This is just an interim step we must take.
Other discussion? If not, we're looking for a roll call vote. All right. Trustee Jackson.
yes.
Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
Trustee Molesky.
No.
Trustee Milburn.
He said no.
He left.
He's not here. You can't cast that vote.
That's right.
Still casting a point.
Trustee
yeah.
Acerson.
You don't have to.
Aye.
Trustee Ashton.
Aye.
Trustee Chamness. Aye. Trustee Christensen. Trustee Cragen.
Aye.
The voting is affirmative in the majority.
I don't think you asked me.
Did I? Oh, I missed Trustee DeLay. I apologize.
That's all right. I vote no.
Okay. The voting is still affirmative in the majority. So, as you might have noticed, there's been a change in chair. The chair has stepped out for a moment. So would like to proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is a resolution authorizing execution of stakeholder agreements for the first and last mile connection. I would ask Mary to address that.
Hi, thank you. So if you remember, in June, the board passed a resolution establishing the approval process for change orders and expenses relating to the first mile, last mile project, which we refer to as the Tiger project, because it was a Tiger grant that we got that funding through. And under that resolution, the executive director was given the authority to execute the Phase 2 construction amendments within the approved construction budget. So this resolution is also regarding that project, but it's looking more at it's looking at the revenue side. So UTA is entering into stakeholder agreements for all the stakeholder-sponsored projects for that Tiger grant. And for those stakeholder-sponsored projects, UTA administers the grant funds, and they also manage the design and construction of the project. And then the local partners provide the required local matching funds. And so this revenue gives authority to the executive director to approve those contracts where the partners commit to transfer those required local funds for the project. We expect those contracts to be within the next few weeks. So we'd like to get, when those funds are available and ready to be transferred, we'd like to have the executive director have that authority to enter into those contracts. UTA's expenditures under those contracts are just limited to the federal funds that have already been programmed for those projects.
I had a question. So I think it was at the June meeting, we gave the chair authority to do new contracts. So like we have the tap on, tap off at MAG. We've got a few other things that we're working on. So there won't be a chair anymore. So then does this then move all of that ability to the executive director for new contracts?
This is just for the Tiger first mile, last mile project revenues that we expect to come in over the next few weeks.
For this resolution, but just to clarify then, in the July one, we said if we had, or the July meeting, June meeting, we said if we had new contracts for past programs and things, that would be the chair would have ability to sign new contracts. And then is it the executive director, or did I mishear it at the other?
I believe it gives the executive director the authority.
Okay, perfect.
Trustee
Sorry, that answered my question.
Okay.
Madam Chair, do we have public comment on this?
We will, yes.
Okay.
Other questions? No. No public comment?
Madam Chair, I move to approve Resolution 2018-10-4.
Second.
And this also requires a roll call vote, I believe. Unless there are other comments.
All right. Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
Trustee Molesky.
Aye.
Trustee Acerson.
Aye.
Trustee Ashton.
Aye.
Trustee Chamness.
Aye.
Trustee Christensen.
Yes.
Trustee Craigan.
Aye.
Trustee DeLay.
Aye.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
It's affirmative unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is 7D.
So this particular resolution needs to be adopted. We've had our deputy treasurer retire, and so we need to change the list of those who are authorized to conduct business at the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund. So substituting for the deputy treasurer, we've recommended the assistant comptroller. So this would give three people, myself, the comptroller, and the assistant comptroller, administrative responsibilities with our PTIF funds. It would also allow us to transfer monies back and forth from the PTIF to our bank accounts at Zions Bank. It requires 2 of the 3 to sign any transfers. So this is kind of just something that needs to get done to make sure we're at PTIF with all those who are authorized to conduct business.
Any questions? Any public comment?
None.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I move to approve Resolution 2018-10-5.
Second. Thanks. Also a roll call vote.
Trustee Molesky.
Aye.
Trustee Acerson.
Aye.
Trustee Ashton.
Aye.
Trustee Chamness.
Aye.
Trustee Christensen. Trustee Cragen.
Aye.
Trustee DeLay. Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
It's unanimous in the affirmative.
Next item is 7E, regarding a resolution authorizing execution of a contract to provide on-site medical services.
Thank you. So we operate 2 healthcare clinics on site for our employees, and they are operated by a third-party vendor. These clinics are part of our ongoing strategy to help maintain and slow down the increase in healthcare costs, and we've seen success over the last few years with this initiative. Additionally, it's been really effective in helping our employees stay healthier, which of course in turn helps with those costs. So our contract with our current vendor expired, and we've went out for an RFP and selected a new vendor named Care ATC. It's a 3-year contract with 2 option years that total $7 million over the 5-year period, so about $1.4 million per year. Care ATC, we selected them because of some of their more innovative ideas and work in helping the on-site clinic model do even more with reducing or maintaining those healthcare costs. Specifically, their technology solutions are great. We've got now new options for our outer divisions in Provo and in Ogden, where we can do telemed services for them until we can find a more robust solution. And we also have e-specialist consults for the on-site providers so that they can actually consult with specialists before requiring an employee to go into our medical health insurance network to see someone. So we've got some really good things with them. So I'm just asking you to approve this resolution that will allow us to execute this contract.
Thank you. Bob, do we have public comment?
We do. We have 3 comments today. Todd Mills.
I'm Todd Mills. I'm the Senior Supply Chain Manager for UTA. Been here with UTA for about 3 years. Just want to give a quick comment on my support for this contract on a personal level. From an employee's perspective, the question was asked earlier in the committee meeting if this was had been a success, and I'm here to tell you from an employee's perspective, it has been a success, and from a contract perspective as well. From a personal perspective, not only being able to during work hours, take 5 minutes, go over, meet with a doctor, get the prescription you need, and be back to work within a very, very short time. So the amount of time we're missing is extremely short. But also through the annual screening programs and things that we do, I was able to find out that I had a genetic blood disorder that causes my body to store iron in all the wrong places, basically. And it's really easy to treat. You just go donate blood every few weeks. But if it's not caught, then long term it causes heart failure, liver failure, kidney failure, all sorts of issues. And so that's the part that now, through preventive maintenance, I can address that and save costs down the road for any kind of healthcare expenditures that would have been much, much greater at that level as well. And then I was also able to, excuse me, find out that, through this, because it was genetic, was recommended, and with my intermediate family, found out that my brother and my son also had the disorder. And so not only helped me, but it helped them in their quality of life as well. And I just want to say that I appreciate that, and I fully support this. It's very, very beneficial to the employees and our families, obviously. So that's my comment.
Thanks for your comment.
Rod Dunn.
Thank you, Bob. Rod Dunn, President of Business Agent, Amalgamated Transit Union, represents basically the bargaining unit, works for UTA. First of all, support this clinic. A few years ago, UTA Kim, we talked about the Care Here clinic that this clinic will be replacing. Had some reservations about it. It has turned out to be I would say, absolute success to our bargaining unit. They work a lot of hours, split shifts, midnights, you call it. A lot of access to them. Wellness program was developed, got our people in there. It keeps growing every year. We've just seen the effects. I sit on the Joint Insurance Committee, and we're seeing the benefits of a clinic like this sorts into the future with the cost for health care. Other thing to get off topic, I just want to thank this board for the services you've done. I've worked with some of you closer than others. I want to thank Chairman Bell, who's left. When he came on the board, came and talked to me personally, talked to him, felt very comfortable, never felt any disrespect from anybody on the board, felt like I could approach anybody here at any time. I felt no mud was thrown at the union or the bargaining unit, and I hope you guys felt the same coming back. Our workers worked hard to make this board proud so that you never had to stress of the work the bargaining unit would do for UTA, even in the tough times. And, you know, they just hoped in return the board would, you know, maybe make their environment a little bit better so they can keep providing good quality transportation for the state of Utah. Special thanks to the people I worked with on the pension committee, Nisha, Mr. McConkey, Gina, even though you were kind of new, but Mr. Acerson, thank you so much. And I know I'm missing somebody. Who is it? Oh, okay. So that's what it was. Just big thanks. You know, working with these people, their patience with me made me a better worker. I started to understand the big picture of things and made me a better person when we walked out of there. Nisha said it best. We went in there years ago as employees and came out as friends. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Norm Blessant.
Hi, I'm Norm Blessant. I'm the Financial Secretary Treasurer of the Amalgamated Transit Union. And I want to kind of say what he said, you know. He does a better job at it than I do. But with the Care Here, or the Care ATC now, it's helped our bargaining unit people out immensely. They can go and get prescriptions at no cost, which is awesome for a lot of them. And they can get it, like he said, in a split for operators, maintenance. They can hopefully get it at lunch or right after work. And they're awesome. And like I said, I'd like to thank Nisha, Mr. McConkey, Gina, Mr. Acerson, all y'all, and thanks.
Thanks so much. Other board comments or questions?
I'd like to speak in favor of this motion. One, being the son of a truck driver and knowing the long-term health effects of a sedentary lifestyle, driving for a living, as well as working late night shifts. Having something like this, I think, distinguishes us from other organizations and keeps people here. I strongly support this. Thank you.
Madam Chair, was that a motion from Trustee Cragen?
I can make it one.
I believe Trustee
I would like to say something as well. These two fine men have talked about, or these three fine men have talked about the benefits. We have absolutely marvelous employees, and no matter what anybody says about a recession, getting employees and keeping them is very difficult. Getting employees, keeping them healthy and keeping them coming to work, especially in this particular industry, is difficult. I move that we adopt Resolution 2018-1006 because we take care of our employees. That's the UTA way.
Seconded.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. We're looking for a roll call vote. Others? Okay.
Trustee Acerson.
Yes.
Trustee Ashton. Did he leave? Trustee Chamness. Aye. Trustee Christensen.
Yes.
Trustee Cragen.
Aye.
Trustee DeLay.
Hell yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
Trustee Molesky.
Yes.
The voting is unanimous in the affirmative.
Next item is 7F, a resolution authorizing execution of a contract for purchase of petroleum and fluid products.
What's cross oil?
Cruise oil.
Hi again, Todd Mills, Senior Supply Chain Manager. This contract here is a contract for engine oil and other fluids that are used in the maintenance of our fleet. This is to support bulk deliveries of all lubricants at all 9 facilities. And the previous contract is expiring this month. This is a new contract. We went out for bid. We did this as an IFB, so lowest cost bidder with a defined scope. The lowest cost bidder was Cruise Oil, who was our previous contractor as well. So no changes there, but that motion to, we're asking to approve this contract.
Any public comment or discussion?
Chair, I move we approve Resolution 2018-10-7.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments? If not,
Trustee Chamnitz?
aye.
Trustee Christensen?
Aye.
Trustee Cragen?
Aye.
Trustee DeLay?
Aye.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee McConkey? Trustee Molesky?
Yes.
Trustee Acerson?
Aye.
The voting is unanimous in the affirmative.
Okay, our last item is 7G, a resolution authorizing the execution of a federal aid grant agreement. Mary will address this.
So this, I'm going to give you an overview of the Sharp Tintic Railroad Connection Project first. So this, if you probably don't understand all the railroads that we own. I didn't until I started working on this, but from the red arrows, that along the left side, that's the Sharp line, and UTA owns a portion of that corridor. And then from the blue arrow all the way down south is the Tintic line, and UTA owns the whole width of that corridor down to Payson. Currently, Front Runner runs on the Sharp line, and if we ever in the future wanted to extend down to Payson, we'd have to figure out how to get from the Sharp line to the Tintic line. That red line that you see there does not currently exist.
How big is that?
Which portion? That little red line. That little red line is about 3,900 feet.
Okay.
And the Tintic, well, I'll talk about it a little bit more. So UTA owns a portion of the Sharp Division and the Tintic Industrial Lead. And currently, as I said, there's no connection between the two lines. And then Front Runner operates on that Sharp corridor down to the Provost Station. So the local partners, Spanish Fork and Springville, they proposed a project that would benefit them. If we connected those two corridors, it would allow for the elimination of 5 at-grade rail crossings, and then it would give them that property where they could develop. And it would also allow for future expansion of Front Runner down into Payson. So Springville City pursued a grant through a federal grant, and it was awarded through UDOT for $5.15 million in federal funds. And Springville, knowing that they don't have the expertise to run railroad projects, but we do, and also that we had long-term interest for the future, eventually to possibly continue Front Runner south to Payson, they asked that we assume the role of the grantee. So for us to do that, this contract that we're going to ask you to approve is so that UDOT would give us the money to run that project as a grantee. There is a local match of $400,000 that's required, and that would be split among the 4 project partners, UDOT, Spanish Fork, Springville, and UTA. UDOT has already committed to their portion of it in the contract, and UTA's portion would be to provide in-kind services. And then here's a little more detailed picture of that project. So we would be building that red line. Like I said, it was about 3,900 feet, and then eliminating about a little over 12,000 feet of the Tintic line, and you could see those 5 grade crossings that would go away. So right now we maintain those grade crossings. It's available for freight for UP, but I don't think it's used very frequently. But the freight would be able to go down the Sharp corridor and connect to the Tentative as well.
So there would no longer be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 line.
Correct.
And
Those are all grade crossings that would go away. And
so do we sell them, or they just sit? What happens here?
so that is just a rail corridor. It could become a rail trail if we wanted to do that. It could be I don't think we would abandon the line because we might want it in the future, but it could be a rail trail for the time being, but the cities could develop around that area.
That's the interest in the communities. They're looking at that as a nice, separation from the street network where they could run a rail trail. Just to clarify, UP, I think, runs about 2 trains a week down there where you see the word Spanish Fork. There's a bit of an industrial development there, and we'll keep some of that line northeast of the word Tintic there, up that black line, to allow trains to move in and switch in and out of that industrial development. While UP operates through there, they do maintain the grade crossings as if we were to build transit on there, we would have to take over maintenance operations of those grade crossings. So it's a significant safety improvement to the city to eliminate those. It's amazing how dangerous a line is when it has very infrequent service. People get used to not seeing a vehicle there, a train there, and they're very slow down through that line. But I think there has been a fake line near Spanish Fork Canyon, and I think one.
There's one, some kids, and it was really tragic.
So this is a nice improvement. UP is supporting and contributing some funds as well towards this. So it's a good team effort and great project.
Additionally, we have some UDOT and Mountain Land Regional Planning has some roads to that area that then, instead of needing to build bridges over this, we can save that because if there's no railroad, you don't need a big railroad bridge over it. So.
Bob, do we have public comment? Other board discussion, questions?
I'd make a couple of comments here. That about 3 months ago, the Utah Commission, we went down and reviewed all this. Andrew was with us. We looked at this project, and they explained that to us. And part of that old line that's being abandoned, or proposal for abandonment, is an elevated. So it makes a really great location for people to walk and look into the community. I mean, they can peek into people's backyards. No, but it's a benefit to the community because it's a safety project. 5 at-grade crossings go away, and we saw that as a real plus.
Madam Chair, if there's no other comment, I move to approve Resolution 2018-10-8.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it, but I was just going to make a comment. I think that this shows that UTA is very willing to work with the communities, and appreciate all the work that's gone into this.
So we have a motion and a second. I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Trustee Christensen.
Yes.
Trustee Cragen.
Aye.
Trustee DeLay. Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee McConkey.
Aye.
Trustee Molesky. Trustee Azerson.
Aye.
Trustee Ashton.
Aye.
Trustee Chamness.
Aye.
And Trustee Bell.
Voting on 08.
Yes.
Aye.
The voting is unanimous in the affirmative.
Thank you.
May I speak first?
Certainly.
Before we move to other business. So I called, or I texted Greg and asked him if I could make a statement regarding what is happening today. 19 years ago this week, I was appointed to the Board of Trustees. That's a long time to serve in any responsibility. And first of all, I want to say that it has been an absolute privilege to work with such amazing people. I don't know how many board members I've served with over these 19 years, probably close to 50. But I have thought all month about the folks I've come to love. And you saw when our union leaders left, they're like family to me. I love them dearly. There's such a feeling of dedication and love and passion about what all of our employees do for this agency. And I want to start first by talking about the union folk. They're the leadership of our rank and file employees. So today, when we had the group from the Salt Lake Business Unit, they're the representatives for those employees. Those guys are smart. They're fiercely protective of those who work for us, who are the face of UTA. And they keep our trains and buses running. Each day, our buses leave the barn and trains leave the barns clean inside and clean outside. They work as well as they can possibly work because of our employees. And over the years, our creative employees have thoughtfully and carefully resolved problems. When tracks started out, they found that the seats were getting dirty, and they couldn't find a way to let them. Of course, they knew they could clean them, but they got wet, and they didn't want to send them out wet. So somebody designed a rack so that they can dry the bus seats every single night as they need to. And we have millions of parts that go to each bus. Many of them are different manufacturers and different years. And somebody found a way to make little buckets on a rack system that goes up and down so that they can put those parts in. I mean, that was an employee finding a solution to a problem that existed. Our terrific mechanics and electrical staff keep the buses running, keep the trains running. And I'm gonna tell a secret, and I might be in trouble for this. But during the closing ceremonies of the Olympics, we had a massive power failure on our tracks, and people were going to come walking down 4 South to get on the trains, and they weren't going to be able to go, and they wouldn't have, except for that all hands on deck made that happen. They made the repairs, and they made whatever they had to do in order to make the trains run that night. And this is the first time I think it's ever been told publicly that happened. Lee, you guys, that's not for print. That's just for our people to know how much we love and appreciate the staff. In the past few weeks, we've seen a repeat of that problem. I mean, it isn't easy to have your system out. It isn't easy to have people complaining constantly. But our guys and gals continually worked to fix what was broken, and when they fix it effectively. Our system is almost 20 years old. We need to expect these kinds of problems. John English, John Pingree, Michael Egger, Jerry Benson, and Steve Meyer have led us through great and controversial times. They've worked with the legislator, the governor, the Federal Department of Transportation, Utah's federal delegation, as well as the public, our citizens, and our cities and towns, and our counties. They've built a world-class bus system, built and operated tracks and 4 extensions to the original line, and now build and operated front runner. Though I have such a great love and respect for our system, I'm not the only one. During my tenure twice, UTA has been named the best large transit system in North America. And that means we're up against Toronto and New York and Pittsburgh and Chicago and Dallas and LA, and we're considered the best. Working with board members, the best board members, and the best staff to acquire land and rights of way, to do the right things in the right way has been the UTA way. I was proud to add my signature to the document that purchased the north-south line that Front Runner now runs on, and that which we talked about today, fixing so we could someday go to Payson. That purchase also bought land for the green line and the blue line. And because of that purchase and because of what's happened with that, my grandchildren, your grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, visitors and guests who come to Salt Lake will be able to take trains and to college, to jobs and entertainment venues for the rest of their lives. UTA has been maligned in the media, and yet our buses are mostly full, and our trains take our citizenry to work in entertainment events every day. Our bus riders are fiercely loyal, and if you don't believe it, be the one that answers the phone when their bus driver is no longer driving their bus out of the bus driver's choice, or because he retired, or because he's sick. Their bus driver is their bus driver. Let me talk about board members. On my whiteboard in my office, I have a list of outside assignments our board members have filled over the years. We've served on lots of committees and organizations that affect transportation and transit outcomes, Wasatch Front Regional Council, Mountain Land, and local entities that they represent. I've served on the board of the Utah Association of Special Districts for many, many years. And I've spent, along with our board members, a lot of time on the Hill during legislative session and during interim session, working to make sure that we have the best possible outcome. We've had a really aggressive community on accessible transportation, and the board member assigned to that committee has worked very, very hard to make those people who need accessible transportation understand us and to bring their needs back to the board. As a board, we never just come to the board and come to board meeting. Instead, we study our agendas, and I remember getting a paper agenda that was sometimes 3 inches thick, and I'm so grateful that there was a time when we decided that I could put it on my iPad or my phone. But we've come to board meetings after having spent time reading, studying, meeting with staff, doing whatever we needed to do so we would have a clear understanding of what we were voting on. We've studied contracts, we've studied outcomes, we've asked questions, and we have devoted hours and hours in our homes, in our offices, and in this building, doing what it took in order to be here and be effective board members, making thoughtful and informed decisions. In other words, UTA has been in excellent hands, both on the board level and in the operations portion. The board has done its best. The team that runs this agency daily are heroes in my mind. They've been remarkable. Our state could not have been better served in any way by anyone better than those associated with UTA over the past 19 years I have been here. And the awards that could line this building's halls, given by outside agencies, entities, and people who really, really respect transportation, or respect engineering, or respect advertising, whatever, have given us many, many awards. And yet we don't have them here because we don't like to toot our horn like that. I love you all, every one of you here in this building, here in this room. You are my friends. You are my family. We are all UTA strong, and we will always have feelings of pride when we see the bus go down the street, when we see the train move people that we love, or when we ride the whatever facility comes in the future that is a direct result of transit. I want to tell you all, I love you, and I am so proud that we are all UTA strong.
Thank you, Nisha. That could not have been better said. Any other comments? Well, Steve, we'll turn the time over to you.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple additional things. You've got my interim executive director report. I wanted to comment on the Midtown trolley unveiling we did a couple weeks ago. I again, a service funded through Prop 1, connects the Layton and Clearfield frontrunner stations with a lot of businesses in that Clearfield-Layton area. And it's sponsored by a lot of businesses, I think over a dozen businesses in that area, and is able to run as a free fare system there. And we had a great unveiling and the first use of we kind of brought back the trolley-style vehicles. So we've got those going on there, and if you get on, you can ring the bell. It's very nice. UVX, as we mentioned, is doing great. We've got been having some construction going on with the S-line double tracking. Last weekend, we shut down the S-line for the weekend to start working on those connections, and that's going to help improve the reliability of that service and enable us to increase the frequency to 15 minutes, which, again, from 20 minutes to 15 doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're standing there waiting, and now just even less reason to think about what the schedule is there. And we've also been having some closures on non-game weekends at around 7200 South. We're doing some work there to reconfigure some track and bridges to accommodate a UDOT project. Their I-15 work down through that corridor, and doing a great job with our PR marketing folks, getting the word out about that, letting people know what the alternatives are. Staff are volunteering to staff the various stations that are impacted to inform the public as they get there what their options are and to move in up and down the valley. And we've had great response. I think this last weekend we didn't have any public comment or come to our customer service about that shutdown. So we've got half dozen or more of those to go to get that project finished, but folks are really doing well on that. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just make one final comment. It's been a privilege for me to serve. I was in tangential ways involved sort of from the start in this. And, as Governor Leavitt reached out to the Union Pacific and began negotiating the 170 miles acquisition of right-of-way along here. And that was only in the mid-90s, it's 20 years ago. It's not that long ago. The Bamberger line, which I was looking at a map in Fruit Heights where I lived the other day, and the Bamberger line was right on the foothill. I mean, it wasn't out anywhere. There was no freeway, obviously. Went behind Lagoon, went east of Lagoon. And the parts of the right-of-way are still throughout Farmington. But the Bamberger only quit service on December 31st, 1958. 1958. And we started UTA in 1970. So I guess it's a lesson to me, don't throw things away. We threw away a technology we thought was never going to be wanted or needed. And, I don't know the practicalities of preserving that, But just think if you had today an unobtrusive, quiet, blending network along the foothills where Bamberger was. Think about the 7th East, look at the medians on 6th East and 5th East and 4th, those huge streets with the grass medians, those were all trolley square, this is a city of trolleys. And progress is progress, but my point is it wasn't that long before. So we need to be real careful about throwing things away because we don't know what the future is. Anyway, it's been a privilege for me to be affiliated with this organization, with you. It's regretful. We've had some crises and some media flare-ups about this and that various people have done, but I think at the end of the day, we're still strong, very functional. I'm grateful to Steve for standing forth at the last minute, showing himself to just be an incredible manager, leader, executive, and thanks to UTA and the many unnamed who have put their heads down. There was uncertainty. There were many disheartening moments, and I know many felt criticized and wrongly blamed, but we've pulled together, and there's a bright future. We've got able people coming in as our new board of directors, and I hope that third vacancy gets filled with someone of equal stature. But I'm still proud to be affiliated with it, and I wish UTA well, and I think it will continue to do well. And we have created a backbone for the Wasatch Front growth. Think about it. I mean, we're not near capacity. We've got a lot of trains left in us, even some lines left in us. And as other technologies are invented and disrupt us and other things, we'll respond to those. So many thanks, and I'll now take a motion from Karen to...
Wait. Point of order. We need a motion about the meeting minutes.
Oh, that's right. Because we will cease to exist effective the new board coming in, we won't be here to approve our minutes, and it's unfair for them to approve their own minutes. And so the suggested process is that staff will draft minutes and circulate them for review by each member here, and then we'll set up a voting process where, unless there's an exception, we'll adopt those minutes. Is that, Kathy, anything you'd add? Okay, thank you for always reminding us. All right, any objection?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion to that effect.
Second.
Second discussion, all in favor, aye. Aye, opposed, no. Danny?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I think it would be appropriate to prepare a letter from this body for your signature to go to Jeff Hawker.
Oh.
Thinking about him, he's had a tough go. And thank him, because he's been a part of UTA for 30 years,
Really?
off and on.
Really?
He'd give a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I can remember being in meetings with him 25 years ago when we were trying to get front runner and tracks up and running. Just been around quite a while, and I don't know what his health issue is, but I understand it's been tough on him, and I think we'll let him know we're thinking about him and wish him well.
Very well taken, thank you. Okay. You get to take those, Babs. They are excess property of no value to us, and therefore you can have them. Yeah.
I heard from our former board member, Mayor Taylor, who said to tell you all that he really appreciated the time he served. And he's doing Afghanistan things.
Wow. Quite the service. Okay. Did we vote? No. All in favor of adjourning?
I was going to make the motion that
Go
we
ahead.
adjourn one final time with a very grateful heart to all of the board members, all of the wonderful people at UTA, and the good people of Utah who use this system that we have labored so hard to make.
I think we did, didn't we? Okay. So
So there-
motion is adjourned second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Thank you much.